Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge that we're holding our meeting today on the traditional territory of Coast Salish First Nations and welcome our guests here today from Island Health, Dr. Robertson, Mr. Shampoo, and Mr. Brayman. Welcome. I'd like to call our meeting to order. We have an agenda, and if we have no items to add, then I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Jackson. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have the minutes from June 27th, moved by Director Davis, seconded by Director Day. Any question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We do not have any member of the public, so I believe we can move right down to staff reports. Mr. Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a staff report from the General Manager of Corporate Services regarding the new hospital business plan. There is a recommendation, but I'll let Mr. Kieber take it from here.
Mr. Kieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So everybody knows the new hospital. There was an announcement made actually last month, I believe. The Premier was here. So the next step in the process of replacement of the Cowichan District Hospital is the business plan. To date, we've purchased the land, we've done the rezoning's been done, the concept plan has been done, and so next step being the business plan. And Island Health is here today to basically ask our support to fund the business plan. No different than the concept plan as well as the purchase of the lands. Both those we've purchased 100% to date, and the plan it would be for us to fund this 100%. With the understanding that these costs all will go towards the Cowichan Valley Regional Hospital District's 40% share of the new hospital replacement.
Right.
We are building up a reserve fund to date. There is currently 44 million sitting in our reserve fund. That's in addition to the money spent to date. We have a plan in place where we tax 8 million this year going into that reserve. The plan would be 9 million next year. We have a number of gentlemen here to answer whatever questions and looking for the board's support to fund the business plan.
Thank you very much. Director Stone?
I just wanted to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Morrison. I would like to give these gentlemen, they appear to have at least a PowerPoint to show us. So I'd like to give them an opportunity to go ahead with that. And then we'll have some time for questions. Mr. Brayman, are you going to? Is it Brayman?
Brayman, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just provide some initial opening comments. Ken Shampoo will walk through the details of the PowerPoint, and Dr. Robertson is here to provide any comments and answers to questions you may have on the clinical aspects of the work we're under. So as Mark mentioned, we've been on a journey together. And the last time we were in this room was in April, where we shared the concept plan that we had submitted to government. And we were all hopeful of an opportunity to celebrate the approval of the concept plan. And Chair, unfortunately, you weren't able to be there on the Friday last month, but the Vice Chair was, along with other members of the board and the community, to celebrate wonderful news of the approval of the concept plan. And I think when we heard from the Premier, the Minister, and the MLAs, tremendous enthusiasm for this project, which reflects the hard work of this board and this community to ensure we're able to continue this important work. And so today is a continuation of that journey, and the letter that you have from our CEO in front of you talks specifically to what our request is of today. And our CEO is one of her favorite lines, more than a line, a belief, is healthcare is about relationships. Relationships between patients and caregivers, but also relationships between Island Health and our communities and our partners. And so I do want to acknowledge and thank the Regional Hospital District for their foresight, both for planning for this from a financial perspective, but also for the land and the partnership and the concept plan and the partnership as going forward. Because I think if we can build our foundation of our relationship, when it comes to those sticky conversations, we are able to work through them responsibly, quickly, and keep our focus on what's ultimately our objective, which is excellent care, health and care for the Valley. So I'm going to have Ken walk through the PowerPoint in a second, And then the last two slides, I'm going to talk a bit about a larger piece of work we're going to be undertaking, and just to provide a bit of advanced insight into that work and why we believe it's so important. So with that, I'll pass it over to Ken.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jamie. So I've been here before, so thank you again for having us here. I'm Ken Shampoo, I'm the Corporate Director of Planning for Island Health. And like Jamie said, I'm just going to quickly walk through this deck and sort of frame what we're going to be doing next. I'll give you a quick reminder of where we were and then onward, upward. So basically, this is what I wanted to walk you through. So just remind you about the vision and principles that we had, that we started in our concept plan. And then I want to talk about what the major phases of a capital project are, what our draft timelines are, and then talk a little bit about the development of the actual business plan, talk about the funding of the business plan, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jamie. Okay? So this is should be familiar. We showed this to you last time. This was developed during the concept plan phase of the project. And these are the visions, the draft vision and principles that we are following throughout this project. One of the learnings from the North Island project, where we built the new hospitals in Campbell River and the Comox Valley, was to set the vision and the principles early in the process. The reason we're calling it draft is we're going to continue our engagement, only do wider and deeper engagement, to refine these, to make sure it reflects the vision and principles, not just for those that work and are directly connected with CDH, but the broader community. So there will be some public engagement as we go forward. And you can also see the bottom four, the facility design principles. While we're quite a ways away from actual design, these are the principles that we have entrenched at the early stages, so that as we get into the business plan, we fall back on these things. So one of the big things, obviously, is flexible design. So when we get to the actual place where we're designing the hospital and we are at the bricks and mortar stage, we want to design a facility that will be able to grow and evolve with the needs of the people in Cowichan Valley for decades and decades to come. So in terms of the major stages, as we're all aware, the concept plan was submitted to the government in February. And like Jamie said, you know, the Premier and the Minister and the MLAs were here, I believe the first week of July, announcing that we now have approval to move to the next stage, the business case stage. And that's where we're at now. In terms of the stages that will follow, the procurement stage will be going out, should we receive approval, will be going out to the market. And then once we enter into an agreement to build and design, build, maintain, whatever we're doing in our procurement, then the design and construction is actually where we actually get shovels in the ground. And then, of course, hopefully 3 years or so after we get shovels in the ground, we'll be opening up for operations. Here's your rough timelines. So business case, we're hoping to complete that in about 14 months. And then we'll be submitting it to the Ministry of Health and the government for approval. And then we have about 16 months for procurement. We go out and we qualify bidders, and then we go into the proposal process. And then hopefully by sometime in early 2021, we'll have financial close on whatever type of deal we're trying to do. And when I say whatever type of deal, it could be a design build or it could be a P3. We know that the Premier's made comments about maybe moving away from P3s. We don't know if that means across the board or just in terms of some of the P3 type deals that we have in other facilities across the province, vis-a-vis having the contract to do maintenance and whatnot for 30 years. So we're not sure. We need to explore that during the business case phase. And then, of course, 3 years or so of construction, and then we commission the hospital and then open for business. So if all goes well, open for business sometime in the fall of 2024. And then I'll just remind folks, of course, that red star is the next provincial election. It was going to be in the spring, but I believe the legislation is now passed to move it into the fall. And in terms of the business plan itself, it's very similar to the concept plan. Remember, I think I described it as we're really flying at 50,000 feet in the concept plan. We move from concept plan to business plan, we bring it from 50,000 feet much closer to ground level. So the level of detail and the level of specificity that the government's going to be looking for before they actually approve us to go to the next phase is significantly larger. So we go from a Class D to a Class C estimate, which is, I think, plus or minus 10 to 15%. So they want that specificity and detail in the business plan. And the core elements, we want to refresh all the stuff that we've done in the concept plan, so we have some updated data. We continue to do that. We want to take a look at our service delivery model, the procurement options. I mentioned P3, but that isn't the only avenue we can follow in the province. We look at design, build, finance, design, build, maintain. We have to do a full risk assessment. And then, of course, the biggest thing that the government's going to be looking for is the detail and the assurance on our budget. Not just the building, but also in the funding analysis and the accounting analysis vis-a-vis the 40%, 60% split between the RHD and the province, and what that looks like in terms of the funding, and then obviously the commercial and legal analysis. So we're going to get into a whole bunch of detail on all those things. In terms of the key work streams, at the concept plan level, we did what was called a master program. And the master program took a look at all the functions that are in a hospital at 50,000 feet. Now we take that master program and we start to develop what's called a functional program. And the functional program starts to take a look at not just the gross space needs, but also how many examination rooms, what types of patient flows between each function, what are the adjacencies that are important. So for example, if we have a trauma patient come in, it's important if they come in through one of the emergency doors that we can get them to diagnostic imaging very quickly. So diagnostic imaging is an important adjacency to our emergency room. You don't see hospitals with an emergency room and the diagnostic imaging way down the hall. So we take a look at all of those things in the functional program. And these are the contracted subject matter experts that we're going to be enlisting. This is I guess a subset, I would say. But these are the main ones that we take a look at the functional programs, development of the functional program. The programmer is our main subject matter expert. That's what these guys do day in, day out. They'll also be linked to our architectural team. And the architectural team will challenge and push and work with the programmer to make sure that what we have is a functional program. PBC, that's short for Partnerships BC. They're sort of the procurement experts and the large capital project experts for the province. We have IMIT, Food Services Security, and our Equipment Advisor. And like I said, that's a subset. The functional program then is then used to create what's called an indicative design. An indicative design, basically, we are going to work with the architectural team and design a fully functional hospital. And so that's all of the engineering, like all the electrical, all the mechanical, all the structural, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to have architectural diagrams for a fully functioning hospital at CDH. That might not be the hospital you wind up with, but we need to be able to cost a fully functioning hospital and then go out to the market and say, okay, we know what it would cost if we built this hospital. We have great assurance in the estimates that we have in building this fully functional hospital based on the indicative design. And that's where we start with our financial modeling, and that's what we go out to the market with. So we can give assurance to the province that this is what it will cost to have this fully functioning hospital. In terms of the proposed budget, and I believe this was in the letter that was sent to the board from our CEO recently, the proposed budget for the development of the business plan is $5.36 million. We're hopeful we can manage that down below 5.36, and that includes all of the costs of the project positions and the subject matter experts, some of which I listed on the last slide. It doesn't include the in-kind contributions that are typical in projects and engagements like this. So for example, across Island Health, we're going to be tapping into folks like David, who still have to do their day job. We're going to be tapping into folks up and down the island who worked on our North Island Hospitals project, folks who have responsibility for the island-wide portfolios and locally for the portfolios here in the Cowichan Valley, and tapping into their time. And the same thing for our physicians. We've been discussing with the Medical Staff Association, which is the physicians who work primarily out of Cowichan District Hospital, and they're, I think, excited and engaged. I think they're pretty enthused about getting to this next phase, and they've already said they will put some of their money forward to help with the engagement activities to pay for physicians' time on these. So I think the stars have aligned in a really good way. There's so much support and enthusiasm, I think, not just in the valley but across the island, to take the next steps on this project. So in terms of our formal request, and again, that's in the letter from our CEO, we are requesting that this RHD provide the funding for us to proceed with the development of the business plan to a max of $5.36 million. And I believe through discussions with Mark and with Brian, it was agreed that contribution would be applied to the overall 40% contribution of the RHD in terms of the final costs. So I am going to hand it back over to...
Just before you do that, Director Kuhn, you had a...
I have a question, and I apologize if it sounds like it's a stupid question. There was the hospital built in Campbell River, and I don't know how in size it compares to the one that we're trying to build. My question is this: wouldn't it have been possible to base our plan simply on the hospital that's built in Campbell River? They must have gone through the same process that we're going through now, and I thought, maybe we could just kind of copycat. Is that not possible?
And actually, that's a great question, and actually, we are going to be doing some of that. And so that we're not starting from scratch. We're applying all of the lessons learned from Campbell River and Comox Valley, and so it's a unique situation. I don't think any other health authority has been in this advantageous of a position to learn from not one but two brand new hospitals that have just opened in this short a time period. So to answer your question, we will absolutely be using those, and so part of what we're doing is we're requiring our programmer and our architectural team to actually look and take tours of what we've done in North Island. And then secondary to that is to share information from the site leadership at both hospitals to say, looking in the rearview mirror now that we've been opened just under a year, what would we have done differently? And there are a few things that we would do differently in terms of physical design, structural design, in terms of patient flow. So we've learned. And so I think it's going to be a huge advantage for the new CDH in this next phase to take those learnings. But also there are some architectural designs, there are some parts of their functional program. There are some things that we learned with First Nations engagement and their advisory committees. There are things that we learned with the linkages with community-provided services. There's a whole bunch of things that we now have some foundation, and now we can just make CDH that much better. So great question.
Thank you. Director Dory?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will there be any federal dollars coming into this project?
No, typically these are, I mean, we can always ask, but I'm pretty sure I know what their answer will be. Typically these projects are funded entirely within the province.
Director Yanni DiNardo?
Thank you. Would there be any consideration on using wood first or anything like that? In the other two hospitals, I'm not sure if they did that or not.
This is a really informed group. That's a great question. In fact, there is a provincial policy which is still wood first. And so that was put in place back in 2002, 2003 or so, and it was to encourage major capital construction within British Columbia to access one of our primary resource industries, lumber. That still exists, so it absolutely has to be part of our indicative design, and actually, if the policy remains, will also be part of what our final design and build will be. Where there's some toing and froing is wood to be used structurally versus wood to be used as
Finish.
Yeah, exactly, in finish. And so it was absolutely done in, have folks here had tours of the
Right.
two hospitals? So you saw, like, when you walk in and it looks like a longhouse, the wood, there was some structural, but then also some in the finish. And so that will be the same thing in CDH.
So the province also is a percentage of food for the food services would be local food. Does anything have to be adjusted for that, or have you looked at, has it made any difference in the other hospitals? Have they moved forward with that, the food for, the local food? So local food in the hospitals, has that made any difference to how it's designed?
Yeah, and I think with all of the food services, I think there are some things that we learned from North Island. And I'm going to take it one step further, and that is, some of you may have already heard about the sort of community first. And so part of what we'll be doing during the business case is exploring all of our food services. So not just food services for our inpatients, folks that have to stay in there overnight, but also how do you access food if you're a family visiting a loved one in the hospital, or if you're staff or a volunteer or a physician working there? What does that look like? And so I would say all doors are open right now, but given what we've heard about benefits to the broader community in large capital projects like this, I would say that those things will be explored to the nth degree, not just during the business plan phase, but continuing. And we're going to want to explore that with our successful bidders as well.
And just one more question that I had. We work around this table a lot with is sustainability and garbage and recycling. Is there any thought to be doing that any differently in hospitals? I notice a lot of waste, not only with food, but there is a lot of waste because there's gloves every 2 seconds. How will you be doing anything differently that way?
Absolutely, it's great questions, and absolutely, I would say that a couple of things. Every project like this has to, at a minimum, achieve LEED Gold. We're hoping to meet or exceed that. The other thing that's just happened as well, since this government since this government's come into power, is they also now have a policy that they want us to explore net zero emissions. And so there's a cost to that. And so what that means is can this facility on the whole be net zero in terms of its footprint on the environment in the Cowichan Valley? There's a cost to that. And so what we'll be doing during the business case is saying, here's what we think we can do, and here's the additional capital costs that it would take to achieve these different levels of efficiency. To your point about operations, we actually have a full-time team in Island Health who's continually looking at not just efficiency and effectiveness, but also what is our footprint on the environment in terms of reuse, recycle, reduce. And so things like latex gloves, where it's clinically safe to do certain, to reuse or reduce or recycle, we're doing those, and we continue every year to do more and more of that. And so certainly, when you've got a new facility, you've got a great opportunity to hit reset on a lot of old practices, because yeah, hospitals they're a heavy burden on the environment and the community. They really are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Director Marsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Shampoo. Are you considering then geothermal as part of your plan to be net zero, or?
This is I love this. So I think all energy sources are going to be considered. So we actually looked, as an example, we looked at geothermal when we did Comox Valley. And there was consideration for it, but because of the capital costs, it wasn't done. Part of what we'll be doing when we get our geotech on site, we need to find out, number one, what's under the surface.
Yeah.
Once we get a better picture, so they'll be there drilling and figuring out what's there. Once we get a picture of that, then geothermal may or may not be an option that gets explored. And I guess the same thing for the broader official community plan in that area. Is there an
Yeah.
opportunity to have some sort of power sharing or power system? And that might have been where you were going with this.
That
If
was
there's
going to
a
be my next question about a potential district
Yeah.
energy source. Thank you. And also, a number of years ago, a lot of mainly women, working women in this valley, lost employment when the laundry and other services were sent over the mountain. Is there any assurance that our people who are helping to pay for this hospital, that their neighbors and family members will have livable wage jobs and the laundry will be done here and that kind of thing?
I can't speak specifically to laundry at this time, but certainly the intent, I think, of Island Health is not to not have any jobs lost. The other thing I would say, too, is that this government and the Ministry of Health and Island Health are interested in exploring what opportunities do we have, broader opportunities in the valley for not just employment, but for training during this large capital. So what we saw in the North Island project was lots of men and women, I think a considerable number of First Nations people being employed, not just for the project, but actually completing their tickets for their trades through the training that was done up there. So a bit of a success story, and so we learned from that, and I think we have support from Island Health and from the ministry and from the government to continue and build on that here in this project.
It's very much like the social procurement policies that most of Vancouver Island communities are looking at.
Yeah.
Local government tables, so that's encouraging. And I had one more question, but I can't find it, so. In terms of when you're doing the cost, the capital, extra capital to be net zero, do you factor in the savings over time of energy and projected savings over energy?
Yeah, and what we would, so we would be looking at our indicative design. So here's a functioning hospital that achieves LEED Gold. And then here's to get it to net zero, and here's the additional capital costs. Accompanying all of that work will be, here's what the life cycle and maintenance costs and operating costs will be for each thing we do. So for example, in the concept plan, we took a look at what the 50-year projections were, 50 to 100-year projections on climate change. It's going to be hotter here. So what does that mean for the building? So it means probably a difference in windows, it means a difference in cladding, it means a difference in insulation and R values. And it's additional capital cost, but hopefully your operating cost goes down. And if you don't plan for that, those additional operating costs will be thrust upon Island Health, and so we're absolutely going to be doing that as we cost out not just the capital but the operating and life cycle costs, and that's important to all people and all stakeholders to have a look at that.
Yeah, and just one last thing, if I may, Mr. Chair. I was really impressed with, I think it was the Campbell River, where the workstations and the patients were in the outer rim of the building so that they could see the nature. And I know that this site provides a lot of trees and a lot of nature, and I'm hoping that that's one of the things that you'll consider when you're looking at this design.
We've had a lot of positive feedback about one of the things that our CEO and all of our executive have endorsed is our priority is the patient experience and the staff experience. And we want to be a great place to work and learn, but we also want patients and families to have a great experience in all Island Health facilities. Based on that feedback and the learnings that we've had from North Island and the evidence points to better recovery times, reduced length of stay, and a better overall patient experience when they can view nature from their beds. And so, absolutely, I would hope that we can preserve as much of the surrounding views and nature and trees as possible and allow patients to have those views.
Thank you. Can I just say one more thing, Chair Lefebvre? I know Mr. Bramman is probably going to speak, but I just don't want to take the floor anymore after this, but I wanted to just share with the board and you, Island Health with you came to our Cowichan Community Health Network recently, and we learned, it was a very frank and interesting, intense evening, but it was really beautiful, and I think that every member that was there were very hopeful and encouraged after that meeting about the direction of relationships first, and all of us are excited to meet your CAO at some point, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I'm really excited at where this has progressed to, and I really enjoyed our tour of the Campbell River Hospital a year and a half ago or something. When I was looking at building a house, I looked at all of the various ways, net zero and various methods of green building, and LEED has always been a bit problematic. It's mostly about individual bolt-on components kind of thing and planning ahead, but the passive house or living building challenge, they look at the whole building as a system. So the modeling that you get is a lot. You can get within like 10 or 15% of your modeling from what you've designed to what your actual result is, but the LEED can be wildly anywhere way out. So, and the basic idea from the beginning was if you plan it in from the beginning, you'll save a lot more money than if you try to add it on at the end. So.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much you can save in the life cycle costs and annual operating costs when you do that holistic planning. And you're absolutely right. The way that the LEED works is you're awarded points for certain things. But like you said, you can popcorn that stuff all over the place in terms of how you earn your LEED points to achieve the benchmark that gets you to LEED Gold. And it might not be a fulsome plan that is based on the sort of the core of your facility. It could be, like you said, some bolt-on things. But certainly when we work with our architects and when we get to final design, we will be working for that because it would be advantageous for the life of that facility if we can have a core facility that is high functioning and super efficient over the entire lifetime.
Okay, thank you. And we have some more presentation coming.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I just have, two additional slides. And this speaks in part to Director Marsh's comments. As I think as everyone knows, a healthy community, a robust primary and community care system of care in the Valley will have a benefit to hospital care. We can reduce the demands on the hospital by having a robust system of care in the community. And also, previous to the role of the health authority in primary and community care, a strong and vibrant and healthy community. Our CEO has tasked us to also, as we look at the replacement project for CDH, also look more broadly at the health and care of the Valley out to the 2036, 2040, which is the span of this hospital projection for need. And so ensure that as we plan the hospital and look at what do we need to do to reduce utilization in the hospital, what do we need to do to build more robust supports in the community, what do we need to do to work closely with our community partners to create a vibrant community throughout the Cowichan Valley, that will have a benefit to the hospital upon opening and throughout the lifespan of the hospital. So as we engage throughout this fall around the hospital in the business plan, we'll also be having conversations with stakeholders internal to the health authority, with the public, with the regional hospital district, with the community about a health and care plan that is, part and parcel of the conversation on the business plan for the hospital, because we think it's critical that we don't look at this work in isolation. The hospital is a part of a continuum of care, not only of the health authority, but part of the community as a whole. So I just wanted to give a bit of a kind of a heads up to that conversation, because to date we've been talking about a concept plan and a business plan for a hospital. So we will be looking more broadly, which will raise some questions in the community about, well, wait a second, I thought we're doing a hospital. So there will be some conversation and awareness, and then to really hear and engage the communities of the Cowichan Valley on what does healthcare look like in 2035, 36. And so some of the work we're going to be looking at within the business plan and the health and care plan is, what does a healthy and vibrant community look like? And how can the health authority partner with the community on the vision for what that looks like? Public health, disease prevention, the primary community care services. We've heard a lot lately from the Seniors Advocate on unpaid caregivers, family caregivers, and the impact of being a caregiver for a loved one and the need to support those people. All of these pieces will be able to reduce the demand on the hospital if we can have a robust system of care. At the same time, and I know Dr. Robertson and his colleagues will be very much focused on the hospital as it is right now. Over the next 6 years, CDH has to prepare for a new hospital, a new way of being, a new way of functioning. And that takes time, practice, awareness, and ensuring that when we open this facility in 2024, we have a care team experience that can move right into a new environment. So how do we look at the length of stay in patients of hospitals? How do we look at the best possible care so that when we move to the new environment, it is seamless? So there's pieces of work that we're very excited to be undertaking, both in the larger community conversation and within the business plan work. And so I just wanted to highlight those two pieces as important work that you'll be hearing more about as we move through the next couple of stages.
Thank you very much, Director Jackson.
Yes, that's very interesting what you just said. Are you going to sort of do a graduated move-in, or is it going to be one day everybody goes to Gibbons Road for work and the next day they're on Bell-McKinnon? Or are you going to like slowly move services over? How does that work?
Well, and I think those are some of the conversations. Across British Columbia, there have been staged moves, and there have been complete moves. When you have a hospital, as the North Island Hospital experience for both of them, it was a move that started about 6:30 in the morning, and by about 10 o'clock in the morning, most of the key pieces had moved. Some pieces had moved a few days earlier, some pieces moved a bit later. If we followed our experience with the North Island Hospital, it would be a move of that nature, which is, in the case of Campbell River, was across the parking lot. In the case of Comox, it was across town, so partnering with the ambulance service and those. It's a fascinating experience, but that would be experience that we would be learning from our previous experience and that of others in BC to say, as we get closer to the actual time to move, what's the best approach to take, recognizing that a parking lot to 6 kilometers is a different ball of wax. We have to consider how to effectively do that, ultimately with the objective of safe patient care as paramount at every part of transfer.
Thank you for that. Director Yoni DiNardo.
Thank you. What happens to the old, that's the first question that everyone asks me, what are you going to be doing with the old hospital? Is it any part of the plan or?
Government has asked us to consider that as part of the business plan process and to make a recommendation on that to government as part of the business plan. So we will be exploring those options, and I believe that that's in the direction from ministry on that, as the possibility is they may want to use that as part of the offset for the cost of the hospital. That's a possibility, or they may want to see it as an asset that can be used in longer term. So we'll be exploring those questions in the business plan with a recommendation coming out of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. One of the things that I've found is that there's been a lot of questions from community members, and they're not really looking for great explanations. But one of the things around the siting of the hospital, I've had people in conversation saying, why on earth would they have picked there? Now, because I knew of some of the criteria, I could say, out of the floodplain, close distance to everything, centralized, and there was that explanation. Well, you've got a number of people around here that are going to be running for office and are going to be in the municipal elections coming up, and I'm wondering what kind of messaging can be developed either by Island Health or in conjunction with our communications people, so that we've got something that's short, sweet, to the point, that can give the public a fairly clear understanding of what is the business plan? What is, where are we at in this process? And not to this sort of extent, but just in a couple or three sentences that can give people a sense of where we're at in that timeline and continuum.
So we will, as part of the engagement that occurs throughout the business plan, we will be having a very comprehensive engagement support for all pieces of this, including opportunity for the public. But to your specific point, can we collaboratively develop a one-pager for elected officials throughout the entire Cowichan Valley? Absolutely. Happy to commit to that. We can work collaboratively on that to make sure that you have the information you need in addition to the website and other materials that will be developed to support this.
Thank you. Director Dory?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will this hospital be, you might call it a teaching hospital, where they partner with the university and bring students here to work and learn and maybe even stay?
Dr. Robertson? Welcome.
Thank you. Currently, we do quite a bit of teaching anyway in the Cowichan Hospital. We absolutely plan to expand that. And so built into the concept plan was a section outlining the fact that, yes, we should be dealing with education, and we should have education friendly and education design type parts to the building. So yes.
And will this help you attract and retain and get specialists to come to the hospital?
Certainly, some specialists, definitely family physicians, definitely nursing, and probably laboratory technologists, allied health as well. All of those.
Dr. Robertson, I believe I've heard you say that having a brand-new state-of-the-art facility is a huge attraction in and of itself.
Yes, it is. Absolutely, it is. It's an attraction in terms of recruiting. It's a huge attraction. The Cowichan CDH, we all know, everyone in this building knows it. It's not a particularly easy building to work in. It happens to be a wonderful group of people there, and the atmosphere to work within it is tremendous. But putting that into a new building, yes, that makes it very attractive.
Thank you. Seeing no more hands up at this time, I want to thank all three gentlemen for their presentation. And we have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any further comments or questions before I call the question? All in favor? And opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Gentlemen, thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. We can move down to question period, but I see no members of the public. I think that's our lawyer. So a motion to adjourn, moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Davis. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.